Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Friday, April the 4th. Is it? The 4th? Yep. 2025. And just another morning after another defeat on the football field. Carlton going down to Collingwood in another pathetic display, this time by 17 points. For the fourth time this year, in all four games, we've led at half-time and then been blown away in the second half. So anyway, great way to start the day. Anyway, on this day, all right, back in, was it 1963? I've got a few to get through, well, 3 or 4 to get through here. In 1963, in Tokyo, Brazilian Edra Joffe, one of the greatest fighters of all time, was crowned WBC bantamweight champion when he knocked out the Japanese fighter Katsutoshi Aoki. In, what else did I see there? In 2009, Mexican Edgar Sosa knocked out Thailand's Pornsawan Porparuk. I hope I've got that right. In 4 rounds in Mexico. And that was in defense of his WBC light flyweight title. 2009, who can forget this guy? Edwin Valerio won the WBC lightweight title when he knocked out Colombian Antonio Pitalua, I think it is, in Austin, Texas. And what an absolute tragedy it was when we lost Edwin Valerio. Like, I know he had a very, very checkered past, but geez, what an explosive fight. I think he won every single fight of his career by knockout. I know there's probably a few tomato cans in there, but won every fight by knockout, and a lot of them in the first round. Just an absolute beast. 2009 as well, Timothy Bradley defeated Kendall Holt on points in Montreal, Canada, to defend his WBC super lightweight title, or 140-pound title. 2015, Adonis Stevenson defended his WBC light heavyweight title with a decision over Tszyu Bika. And obviously most Australian fight fans will be very familiar with Tszyu Bika. So he won a 12-round decision in Canada. And in 2015, Mexico's Carlos Cuadros defeated Panama's Luis Concepcion by decision, defending his WBC super flyweight title, and that was in Mexico. And then Aussie fans will obviously recognise Luis Concepcion as well. I recognise him very well because I actually promoted Luis Concepcion against Andrew Maloney in Bendigo back in 2018. That was for a WBA eliminator, that one was. And one last one, Ray Mercer, former WBO heavyweight champion, 91-92 I think it was, Olympic gold medalist in Seoul in 1988, was born on this day in 1961. So what's that make him? 64 today. Can you believe that? Ray Mercer, 64 years old. So happy birthday to Merciless Ray Mercer. And I still remember actually when he lost to Larry Holmes in a massive upset. Larry Holmes was just seen as finished and came back and beat Ray Mercer. Anyway, I think that was for the it was a WBC eliminator, I think it was, whatever. All right, so as has been the case all week, there's been 2 to 3 articles every day about Tszyu, and that's always the norm, isn't it, when we've got a big fight coming up. It's interesting that, I know, I sort of go over it all the time, that the Jai Patayas of the world can probably be lucky to get 1 or 2 stories in the weeks leading up to it, and Tszyu's got 2 or 3 a day. But look, he's still Australia's sweetheart, isn't he? At least with the media. But look, it is a big fight, of course, and I'm only sort of making fun. But we've had all sorts of stories about him this week, whether it's, you know, he's pretty much his views on pretty much everything. But everyone have sort of delved into a lot of what Tim is up to in the camp, and everything's sort of been covered. Well, I've had to sort of dig a little bit deeper in a few days out because I think they're running out of stories. But they run yesterday a story about his relationship with his grandpa Boris, and his probably lack of relationship with his dad Kostya. Now, you know, a lot of people saying, "Where's Kostya? How come he's not coming?" And Tim was actually quite blunt. He said, "Look, he hasn't been a big part of our lives, so why would he be here?" And we all know that he went to Orlando last year and that didn't well, because you've got to remember, Kostya would have just such an overwhelming presence. And from all accounts last year in Orlando, not that it probably would have affected the result at all, but apparently it didn't really help proceedings to have him around. He drew a lot of attention. No doubt there would have been a lot of perceived pressure on Tim as well, and maybe that's what made him fight the way that he did against Murtazalov. And I know a lot of people said he was trying to impress his dad. I would hope that when you're a 30-year-old world champion, that you're not going to stray from the game plan and fight recklessly just because your dad's at ringside, no matter who it is. But that's one of the reasons they're saying. But yeah, he did say, look, I've never really had a relationship with my dad, he said. This is with Nikita as well. Excuse me, that's got something in my eye there. And so he said, why would he be at ringside for our fights? No, I think he said that Costa's only been, I think he has 2 fights in his career, his first fight and the last fight. And I think with Nikita, it's been 1 amateur fight. That's been it that he's been to. And look, I don't think either brother was sort of too stressed about the whole thing. I just think, especially Tim, sort of sick of talking about it. And of course, the journalists all need talking points, and that's fine. But I think Tim's probably got to say it some. Say, hey, we've gone over this 20 times in the past. He's not part of my life, and so let's just drop it. I know he did do a little bit of training with him in Thailand too, of course. But as far as the everyday stuff, because if you didn't know, he went straight after his career. He went back to Russia. Marriage obviously broke down with Tim and Nikita's mum, Natasha. And she's moved on. She still lives here, and by all accounts is doing great things. And he went back to Russia, and the boys were pretty much sort of brought up by their mum and their granddad, who's been there apparently at every single fight except the ones in America, for Tim, that is. For some reason, he can't travel to the States. And it was funny hearing him talk, and you can just tell by the way he talks about his granddad. And I've actually seen it in person. When Tim fought on my card in 2018, Boris was actually there, and he doesn't say a lot. He just stands there and just sort of, I won't say judges you, but he sort of looks at you. He looks like he's very hard to get to know. He looks very protective. I'm sure English would be a bit of a problem for him as well, but when he talks to Tim or Glenn or anyone else, it's normally, this is Glenn Jennings I'm talking about, it's normally in a very quiet tone, so no one else can hear what's saying. I know he does what they're saying. I know he does talk to Tim in Russian as well. I'm assuming it's the same with Nikita. And a very unassuming guy, but he has got a presence about him as well, and that's obviously where Kostya gets it from. But it was funny because Tim told a really, I was going to say an interesting story, that his role on fight night, and apart from being the mentor and being the father figure, I suppose, for the boys, he's got another job. Apart from maybe being a water boy in the change rooms, whatever it might be, he's got a very unique job, and that is, if Tim couldn't help just burst out laughing when he was telling the story, that when the boxers have their gloves on, if you've ever been in the ring, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's nerves, anxiety, and sometimes you're all gloved up, ready to go, and nature calls. And Boris's job apparently is to take the duties of, let's just say, helping out in the toilet. And that includes giving it a shake as well. And you had to laugh. And look, it's a tense fight week. Sometimes you need a laugh. You need something just to break the ice a little bit. And I think it's good to see. You can definitely tell that Tim is a lot more relaxed with his granddad around, and they have a bit of a laugh together. And who knows, maybe that's the difference. But again, I'm not sure why he can't travel to the States or overseas. But obviously there's some reason there. Sorry. But it was... and the other thing too with Tim, apparently it wasn't very well known. I'm sure a lot of fighters do it, but he's now enlisted the help of a psychologist. That was another story that we got this week. And is an American guy. They must do it via Zoom or whatever it might be. And apparently he's been really good in obviously getting sort of delving into the mind of Tszyu about the loss to Murtazalov and maybe other things as well. So they didn't actually mention his name, but apparently he's been doing some really good things with Tim. And look, in this day and age with everything, it's probably a great decision by Tim Tszyu to do that, because everyone sort of talked about his mental state and how that knockout would have affected him, and to enlist a psychologist. Nothing bad about that. I'm sure back in days gone by it would have been seen as a part of weakness. But I think it's fantastic that he's doing whatever he can to get his career back in check. And that also involves, by the way, fully extensive medical tests as well on his brain. And a lot of people were a little bit worried about him after the severity of that knockout in October to Murtazalyov. But they've had him tested in the States, and then also back here in Australia with his longtime doctor, Dr. Bill. I can't remember Bill's last name. I did meet him in Las Vegas, and he's a very, very knowledgeable guy who you love to sit down and hear talk, because he knows his stuff. But apparently he did all the tests on Tim back here in Australia as well. He was given a clean bill of health by Bill and the overseas doctors, so all good to go. And I think that's a really good thing, that with all the things riding on Tim's career, all the money involved, and how much everyone in his team stands to make, and all the prestige and glory and all that sort of stuff, that they've actually put his health in front of everything. And you wouldn't expect anything more from, or anything less, I should say, from Team Tszyu. Very close, very tight-knit, and very thorough in what they do. All right, that's enough of Tim Tszyu for today. Tim, you've just dominated my feed all week. But that's okay. Another couple of things. It was interesting I read an article about pay-per-view numbers. Now, it's always been, if you look at the big fights in history, it's always been sort of based on American numbers. These are the big American fights, of course, or the biggest fights in history. It's always been judged on American numbers. Well, now they judge a fight based on global pay-per-view numbers. And this is because now most of the big fights around the world don't really feature Americans, and they're not in America, because most fights, as we know now, are in Saudi Arabia, obviously big fights in England. And I think the call was made, because I've just released the numbers for Beterbiev and Bivol 2, and it wasn't great. 340,000 worldwide, but only 100,000 in America. This is the numbers they're putting out, 100,000 buys in the States. And again, this is because neither fighter obviously American. Maybe the time, actually I think the time wouldn't have been an issue, because I think they always base it on American time anyway. But 100,000 views. Now, to put it in perspective, a fight like, say, Canelo and Triple G would have been pushing 1 million views in the States, and this was 100,000. Now, I get it, they're both Russian fighters. It's taking place in Saudi. The build-up in the States probably wasn't big. You don't have all the bright lights of Vegas and all the media you get in the States. But, geez, it goes to show, and again, is this a good thing or a bad thing for the state of world boxing, when now it's got to the point where we're measuring pay-per-view numbers on world numbers just to get them up to an acceptable level rather than just the States. And this is a sign of the times, isn't it? We don't have the big fights in the States at the moment. It used to be you'd have to go to, say, Las Vegas or New York or whatever to make the big time. Now it's going to Saudi Arabia. Now, no doubt the cycle will turn, and another 10 years' time we might be back in Vegas and New York, because Turki Al-Sheikh might have gotten bored of boxing and moved on, or done something else. There's our mate, as usual, when we walk past here, giving Neil a hard time. He's not fussed, he'll just jog past, not even bat an eyelid, Neil. He's pretty tough when the other dog's behind a fence. But yeah, so that's the state of play we're in at the moment in world boxing, where the pay-per-view numbers are just in the toilet, really. And you look at also just the attendances as well. I mean, even they disguise it pretty well sometimes. The Saudi Arabia events, they moved the last fights into a smaller venue because they just didn't have the numbers for the bigger venue, and it was hard enough getting an atmosphere, let alone with the crowd they had there, let alone in a half-empty stadium. So, but I must admit, as good as boxing is these days, the fights we're getting, is it just me? I can't wait until things sort of iron out a little bit. Maybe even Turkey moves on and we get back to the big fights in the States. Now, I know I'm from the generation of, you know, the big fights being in the States and just being massive events, and now they're just, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old, but for me they just seem to lack a bit of soul these days. Yes, we're getting the fights that we want, but I don't feel that excited about the fights anymore. You know, can you remember, again, I know I'm going back, but, you know, the Tyson fights and De La Hoya and Mayweather and Pacquiao, Canelo even in the States, back in the days, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard. I know I'm living in the past, but the big fights, they were big, and they were big all around the world. And now, I don't know, I look forward to the fights, don't get me wrong, but I don't have that buzz that I used to have jumping out of bed, you know, and a big fight coming to you from, you know, Sunday afternoon from Las Vegas. Anyway, as I said, it all turns. Things go in cycles, and I'm sure one day we'll have big fights. Of course, Canelo and Crawford's, the fight is in Vegas in September, so maybe that'll relight the flame a little bit, but that's the state of play. Pay-per-view numbers are down. Illegal streaming is through the roof apparently, which is affecting numbers. They just cannot beat the people out there that are streaming it illegally. And also too, the crowd numbers look like they're down as well for a lot of big fights. So I don't know, are we just sort of hiding a few things where we all think boxing's never been healthier, but at the same time we're talking about pay-per-view numbers being down, crowd numbers being down? I don't know. Give me your thoughts on that. What else have we got there? Yes, I had to write a couple of things down today because there was so much going on. But it looks like Tank Davis and Lamont Roach, the rematch, will take place in New York. No, sorry, I take that back, in Las Vegas on July 21st. Now, which is good news for Lamont Roach. He deserves a rematch, and that's awesome. It's going to happen so quickly. But the only thing is what that is going to do is affect possibly the George Kambosos Richardson Hitchens fight, because that was supposed to be on July 21st, and there are reports that they don't really want to go up against that fight, and probably quite rightly so. No need to have a big fight on that weekend when you don't want to give fans too many options on the same weekend. So there are talks that it will be maybe a week earlier. So what's that, July 14th, or even a week later than the proposed, which is July 28th. I would love it to be July 14th because it would give everyone a great excuse, especially if it's in New York, which it looks like it's going to be a great excuse to go over for the fight, but maybe get there a week early and go up to Canastota in New York for the Hall of Fame inductions of Manny Pacquiao and Vinny Pazienza, Michael Nunn. I think Kenny Bayless might be getting inducted as well, amongst others. So, because I'll tell you what, I wasn't sort of planning on sort of going over there at any time soon, but geez, if it was the Hall of Fame induction of my favourite all-time international fighter and Vinny Paz, and of course the Pac-Man as well, and then a week later going down to New York for George Kambosos and Richardson Hitchens, I might be persuaded, but we'll see. But yeah, with the Davis fight as well, that's great that Lamont Roach is getting his rematch because he deserves it. But should be another big week over there. Now this one I wasn't overly excited about. Now I spoke the other day, Caleb Plant, Jamel Charlo on a double header in Las Vegas on May 31st. Well, I thought it was great having them on the same card, but I mean, the choice of opponents aren't exactly stellar choices. Caleb Plant's going to fight Mexico's Armando Resendiz, and Jamel Charlo is going to fight Thomas Lamana. So I'm not quite sure the background of both those guys. I did check their records. I can't remember what they were, but they weren't great. So it's going to be at the Mandalay Bay too, if you can believe that. Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas, May 31st. Caleb Plant, Jamel Charlo. I'd be interested to see how many people they can get to those fights. They've got a history, of course, after Crawford and Spence. They had a little spat out the back and Caleb Plant slapped Jamel Charlo. So they're going to have plenty of ammunition to build the fight up. But talk about lackluster. I think they'll, at one stage it was talking about maybe Belunga fighting Plant. Well, and he laughed about the whole fight, the fight card, and so he should. I don't necessarily agree with Belunga on many things, but I do agree with him on this. Surely they could pump it up a little bit more, and I'd be staggered if they got 4,000 or 5,000 to Mandalay Bay to see that. It's just a nothing card. PBC have promised a lot. All these pay-per-views they were supposed to be doing on Amazon Prime, and what do we got? Zero. we've had I had about 3 or 4 fights, and I think that obviously the Tszyu fight in Fundora was the first one and had a bit of promise, but since then it's all been downhill, and you just got to wonder how long Amazon Prime stick with boxing and just say or not stick with boxing, but stick with PBC, because I've got to be thinking, geez, where's our return on investment here? And now we've got Netflix coming in as well, which I'm really excited about, because the Crawford and Crawford and Canelo Alvarez fight, looks like it will be on Netflix. And if that is the case, reports are that it will be free, just like the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. So a couple of good things there. If you've got a Netflix subscription, then it's good news. Now, one last thing before I go, guys. I spoke to Big J yesterday, and he asked me to sort of respond to his video yesterday. He was talking about boxing fans, and he made a couple of good points, because there was a few back and forths on the socials about his stance on Tszyu the other night. And as always, Big J stands his ground, but he sort of asked my opinion on boxing fans, and he sort of made a good point when we're discussing reactions to, this is a lot of people responding online as well, the different fans out there. And I suppose the question is, which one are you? And he made a good point in that, in his opinion, there's 3 different fight fans. You've got the fight fans of particular boxers, so don't necessarily follow boxing, whether it be here or overseas. They just follow a boxer. So it might be a Tszyu or a George Kambosos, and they just follow the one particular boxer or boxers, but don't really keep up day to day with everything and go to other fights. They just follow particular boxers. Then you have the ones that just follow the boxers from their country. So here in Australia, it might just be you follow the Australian boxing scene. Tszyu, Zarafa, Kambosos, Liam Paro. You follow Australian boxing, and then you get the ones that are the hardcores, like I'm sure most of you out there are, that follow boxing as a whole. And that's probably where where you're all over boxing every day, and you know what's going on. You watch these type of videos and or a lot of other videos online, and you're right across everything, and nothing gets past you. Because I can tell you, I've put a few things up on YouTube before, and people correct me, which is great. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to wear it. Sometimes I'm a bit unsure about something, and someone will fill in the gaps, which I appreciate. And there's plenty of you guys out there that fit that category. So I suppose that it's a good call, because as I said, like, sometimes you get some comments and you go, what? Really? Really? What are you thinking? But again, I always probably put everyone in the category of being hardcore fight fans, and probably forget that there are those other 2 categories. So again, I thought he made a good point, Big J. And if you haven't seen it, check out his channel, Oz Boxing Talk, I think it is. Sorry if I've got that wrong, Big J. But check it out anyway, because he goes through his opinions on there. So guys, that's going to do it for today. Hope you have a great Friday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.